Part 9. The first night back in my house, I did not sleep much. Laura made up the guest room and kept her door half open, though I told her she did not need to. She only smiled and said, "I know." That was one of the kindest answers in the English language. It meant she understood I was still trying to feel independent, even while needing help. It meant she would not argue with my pride, but she would not abandon me to it either. The house sounded different at night after being taken from me. Every creak made me listen. Every soft tick of the heating vent reminded me that Natalie had walked through these rooms while I was gone, deciding what belonged where, what should be packed, what should be hidden, what should disappear behind the word clutter. Before bed, Laura helped me put George's photograph back on my bedside table. Not the wedding portrait yet. That was still in a box downstairs. This was the smaller one, the one of George in his navy sweater, standing in the backyard with a rake in one hand and a grin on his face. He had hated that picture because his hair was windblown. I loved it because he looked alive in it. I placed it where it had always been. "There," I said. Laura adjusted it slightly. "There." After she left the room, I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at him. "I'm home," I whispered. The words should have felt triumphant. Instead, they felt tired. Home was no longer something I simply had. It had become something I had to defend. The next morning, I woke to voices downstairs. For one frightening second, I thought Natalie had come back inside. Then I recognized Laura's voice and Evelyn's lower one answering her. The fear left, but slowly, like water draining from a sink. I dressed carefully and went downstairs one step at a time. At the bottom, I found the two of them in the living room, restoring the bookshelves. Evelyn had her reading glasses low on her nose and was sorting paperbacks into stacks. "Who puts books backward on a shelf?" she demanded. Laura looked over from a box of photographs. "Someone who doesn't read them." I almost laughed. Almost. The blue curtains were still folded over the back of the sofa. Laura had promised to rehang them after breakfast, but I asked her to wait. I wanted to sit with them there for a while, visible and safe, before they went back up. Sometimes returning things too quickly does not give the wound time to acknowledge it has been touched. I made toast, though Laura hovered like I was defusing a bomb. "I can make toast," I said. "I know." "There's that answer again," she smiled. "You can make toast, and I can stand here pretending not to watch." Evelyn poured coffee. The three of us sat at the kitchen table. My table. The one George had refinished twice because I refused to buy a new one. For a brief moment, things felt ordinary. Then my phone buzzed. Michael. "Mom, Natalie says you humiliated us yesterday. She says bringing an officer was unnecessary and cruel." I read it once. Then I placed the phone on the table. Laura reached for it, but I shook my head. "I'll answer." My fingers hovered over the screen. The old habit rose quickly. Explain. Soften. Apologize for the part that made him uncomfortable. Instead, I typed. The officer was present because my locks had been changed without my permission. That was the cruelty. I sent it. No apology. No extra sentence. Evelyn watched me with approval. "Breakfast tastes better with boundaries," she said. That morning, Arthur called at 9. He had received confirmation from Willow Creek Recovery Suites. No consent form signed by me. No medical order requiring placement. Deposit paid by Michael. Intake questionnaire completed by Natalie. He had also received an email from Claire Benton, the real estate consultant, forwarding 2 photographs Natalie had sent of my living room and kitchen after she staged them. My rooms, arranged for market appeal. While I was in the hospital, Arthur's voice remained measured, but I could hear the change beneath it. "Helen, this pattern is clear now." "What pattern?" "Removal from the home, control of access, communication to relatives suggesting diminished capacity, third-party inquiry about selling or renting, and pressure to accept a temporary placement." I looked across the table at Laura and Evelyn. "Heavier when you say it like that." "It should feel heavy," Arthur said. "Because it is." Before I could answer, there was a knock at the front door. Not the doorbell. A knock. 3 firm taps. Laura stood immediately. Evelyn looked out the kitchen window, then back at me. "There's a woman on the porch. Clipboard." My stomach tightened. Arthur was still on the phone. Helen? Someone's here. Do not open alone. Put me on speaker. I did. Laura went to the door while I followed more slowly. Evelyn stayed beside me. On the porch stood a woman in her 50s wearing a navy coat and carrying a folder. Her expression was professional but not unfriendly. Good morning, she said. I'm Denise Caldwell with Mecklenburg County Adult Services. I'm here to speak with Helen Parker. Laura looked back at me. I stepped forward. I'm Helen Parker. Miss Caldwell's eyes moved over me, not rudely, but carefully. She noticed the slow way I stood, the hand resting near the wall, the tiredness. I received a concern regarding your recent hospitalization and home situation, she said. Arthur's voice came from the phone in my hand. Miss Caldwell, this is Arthur Coleman, Mrs. Parker's attorney. I am on speaker with her permission. Miss Caldwell did not seem surprised. Thank you for identifying yourself. I felt my heartbeat quicken. Adult services. A concern. Natalie had done it. She had not been satisfied with relatives and prayer requests. She had moved to official language. Miss Caldwell looked at me. May I come in and speak with you? I looked at Arthur. He said, You may invite her in if you choose. My house. My choice. Yes, I said. Please come in. We sat in the living room, not the kitchen. I wanted Miss Caldwell to see the boxes, the half-restored shelves, the blue curtains waiting to be rehung, the photographs laid out on the coffee table. Evidence did not always need to be paper. Sometimes it was a living room interrupted in the middle of being reclaimed. Miss Caldwell sat in the armchair across from me. Laura and Evelyn remained nearby. Arthur stayed on speaker. I need to ask some questions, Miss Caldwell said. Some may feel personal. I understand. Do you know today's date? I told her. Do you know where you are? In my home in Charlotte, North Carolina. Do you live here alone? I did before my hospitalization. My niece Laura is staying with me temporarily, and Evelyn Ross next door is helping. I am also willing to hire a visiting nurse if my doctor recommends it. Miss Caldwell wrote that down. Have you recently refused medical care? No. Have you refused assistance? No. I have refused relocation without consent. She looked up. That sentence mattered. I could see it in her eyes. Can you explain what happened after discharge? I did. Slowly. Clearly. I did not dramatize. I did not cry. I did not call Natalie names. I said I was discharged from the hospital. My son drove me home. My belongings were on the porch. The lock had been changed. My daughter-in-law said the house was too much for me. A recovery apartment had been arranged without my agreement. A real estate consultant had been contacted about my property. Miss Caldwell wrote steadily. When I finished, she asked, Do you have documentation? Laura nearly laughed. Evelyn actually did. Just once. I pointed to the coffee table. Yes, Arthur said. Mrs. Parker can provide discharge papers, deed confirmation, text messages, a video timestamp from a neighbor's camera, and copies of communications from the recovery residence and real estate consultant. Miss Caldwell looked at me differently then. Not suspiciously. Respectfully. May I see the discharge papers? Laura handed them over. Miss Caldwell read them carefully. Then she looked around the room. You appear to have support. I do. Do you feel unsafe in your home? I glanced toward the front door. Not because of the house. She understood. Do you feel unsafe with anyone having access to your home? Yes. With whom? My daughter-in-law, Natalie Parker. And at this time, my son Michael, unless I invite him. The words hurt. But I said them. Miss Caldwell wrote them down. That may have been the moment I truly accepted what had happened. Not when I saw the bags. Not when I saw the realtor text, but when I named my son as someone whose access to me now required limits. Miss Caldwell asked whether I had food, medication, transportation, and follow-up care. Laura showed the medication schedule we had written. Evelyn pointed out she could drive me if needed. I provided the appointment card from the cardiologist. Then Miss Caldwell asked, Are you willing to have some temporary home assistance during recovery? Yes, I said, if I choose it and arrange it. She nodded. That is your right. Such a simple sentence. Such a healing one. That is your right. After nearly an hour, Miss Caldwell closed her folder. Mrs. Parker, I cannot discuss the reporter's identity, but based on what you have shown me, I do not see evidence that you lack capacity to make decisions about your residence. I do see a family conflict involving property, access, and consent. Arthur's voice came through the phone. Thank you, Miss Caldwell, she continued, looking at me. I will note that you are alert, oriented, and receiving appropriate support. I will also note that you have legal counsel and have expressed concern about unauthorized removal from your home. I exhaled slowly. Natalie had tried to use adult services as a weapon. Instead, it had become another record. Miss Caldwell stood to leave, then paused at the doorway. Mrs. Parker? Yes? You are allowed to accept help without surrendering control. I stared at her. For a moment, I could not speak. Then I nodded. Thank you. After she left, the living room was silent. Then Evelyn said, Well, that backfired beautifully. Laura covered her mouth. I laughed. Not a big laugh, but real enough that my chest ached and I had to press a hand over it. Arthur was still on speaker. Helen, are you all right? I think so. Good. I'm going to request a copy of the visit summary if possible. This is important. Because she said I'm competent? Because she documented that the concern appears connected to residence and property issues, not medical incapacity. I looked at the door where Miss Caldwell had just stood. Natalie had tried to build a cage out of concern, and now one of the bars had broken in her own hands. By afternoon, the family messages changed. Laura showed me the group chat. Not all of it, only the parts I asked to see. My cousin Ruth wrote, I'm sorry, Helen. I didn't know the full situation. A church friend sent, Please tell me if you need meals this week. I was misinformed. Natalie did not respond publicly. That was how I knew she was angry. Silence, from a person who likes controlling the story, is not peace. It is strategy. Michael called near 5. This time, he did not mention Natalie first. Mom, he said, adult services came? Yes, I didn't know she called them. I sat in George's chair, the phone in my hand, Laura quietly rehanging the blue curtains across the room. Did you ask her? He was silent. Michael. No, he said. I didn't ask. Laura slipped the first curtain ring onto the rod. I watched the blue fabric rise toward the window. Then you have learned nothing yet. He inhaled sharply. I'm trying. Trying starts with asking what your wife is doing before defending why she did it. Another silence. Then he said, She told me she was scared you'd hurt yourself. Was she scared when she contacted the realtor? He did not answer. Was she scared when she packed George's watch in a plastic bag? His voice cracked. I saw the box. Yes, I saw Dad's Navy photo in there. Yes. He breathed unevenly. Mom, I need to talk to you. You are talking to me. No, in person. Without Natalie. Laura stopped moving. Evelyn looked up from the bookshelf. I sat very still. When? I asked. Tomorrow morning. At my house? If you'll let me. My house. My choice. Yes, I said. You may come at 10. Alone. I will. And Michael? Yes. If Natalie comes with you, I will not open the door. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I understand. After we hung up, Laura finished hanging the blue curtains. They fell into place softly. One panel on each side of the window, the color returning to the room like breath returning to lungs. The living room was still messy. Boxes remained. Books were scattered. Some photographs had not been found. The house was not restored. Neither was I. But the blue curtains were back. That mattered. I sat in George's chair and watched the evening light move through them. At 8:13 that night, a text came from Michael. I looked through Natalie's email on the home computer. I found something about a rental estimate. We need to talk. I read the message twice, then once more. A rental estimate. Not just selling. Renting. My house had become numbers before I had even left the hospital. I turned the phone toward Laura and Evelyn. Neither of them spoke. There are some silences that are not empty. They are full of everything about to happen. I placed the phone on the table beside George's watch. Tomorrow, my son was coming alone. And for the first time, he was bringing me something Natalie had not approved. The truth. Part 10. Michael arrived at 10 exactly. Alone. I watched through the living room window as his truck pulled up to the curb. Not the driveway. The curb. That small choice told me something. He no longer assumed he could pull into my property as if it belonged to him. He sat in the truck for nearly a full minute before getting out. His shoulders were hunched. In one hand, he carried a manila folder. In the other, his phone. Laura stood beside me. "You want me in the room?" "Yes," I said. Evelyn was already next door, but only because I had insisted she go home to shower and eat something that was not toast. Arthur was on standby. He had told me not to meet Michael alone, not because Michael was dangerous, but because old patterns are. A mother can become soft before she realizes she has done it. Michael knocked. Not once and then entered. He knocked and waited. I opened the door. His eyes went first to my face, then to the blue curtains behind me. "They're back up," he said. "Yes, they look right." I did not answer. He swallowed. "May I come in?" I stepped aside. He entered slowly, like a guest who knew he had once behaved like an owner. That, too, mattered. Laura stood near the doorway to the kitchen. Michael nodded to her. "Laura. Michael." No warmth. No false smile. Just names. He looked around the living room. The books were back on the shelves, though not all in the right order. George's wedding portrait leaned against the wall, waiting to be rehung. Several boxes remained by the staircase. Evidence of violation. Evidence of repair. Michael saw it all. His eyes stopped on the crooked blue bowl he had made in 3rd grade. It was back on the side table, where it had been for years. He looked away quickly. "Mom," he said, "I found emails." I sat in George's chair. Not because I wanted to appear dramatic. Because my body still needed support, and because that chair made me feel anchored. "Sit down," I said. He sat on the sofa, not in George's chair, not in the chair across from me where Natalie liked to sit during holidays. The sofa. A humble choice. He placed the manila folder on the coffee table. I didn't know all of it. I held up one hand. "Michael, before you say anything else, understand this. Not knowing all of it does not erase knowing enough." His mouth closed. He nodded. "I understand." I was not sure he did. But for the first time, he was trying to stand inside the truth instead of beside it. He opened the folder. Inside were printed emails, screenshots, and several pages I did not recognize. His hands shook as he spread them across the coffee table. "I found these on the home computer last night. Natalie stayed at her sister's after we argued. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Miss Caldwell said, and then about Dad's watch in that plastic bag. I went into the office and looked. You searched her email?" "Our shared email first," he said. Then the folder she used for house stuff. It was synced. Laura stepped closer. Michael looked at me. "Mom, she had a folder called Parker Property." My breath caught. Parker Property. Not Helen's house. Not Mom's home. Property. He handed me the first printed page. It was an email from Natalie to Claire Benton, the real estate consultant. Arthur had already seen one message, but this one was longer. I read slowly. "Once Helen is settled in a recovery arrangement, we want to move quickly. The house shows well with some editing. She has a lot of personal items, but we are working through that. We are interested in both rental value and sale preparation. My husband is the only child, so we expect this to be straightforward eventually." Straightforward eventually. That phrase sat on the page like a snake. My husband is the only child. She had not lied exactly. She had simply placed my death, incapacity, or disappearance in the word eventually. Michael's face twisted as I read it. "I didn't know she wrote that. But you knew she contacted Claire. Not before yesterday. I knew she talked about maybe someday looking into value, but I didn't know she had sent photos. I didn't know she wrote that." I looked at the next page. A rental estimate. 3 bedrooms. Desirable neighborhood. Potential monthly rent between $2,900 and $3,300. Notes about fresh paint, decluttering, neutral staging, curb appeal. Decluttering. That was what they had called my life. I picked up the 3rd page. It was a draft document. Not signed. Not dated. But prepared. Temporary property management authorization. My hands went cold. The first paragraph stated that I, Helen Parker, would allow Michael Parker to manage maintenance, mail, contractors, rental inquiries, and financial communications regarding the property during my recovery period. A bridge built from weakness to control. Where did this come from? I asked. Michael's voice was low. Natalie drafted it. I think she wanted you to sign something once you were at Willow Creek, Laura said. She was going to move her to the apartment and put papers in front of her. Michael flinched. But he did not deny it. I looked at him. Did you know about this document? No. Did you know she wanted access to my mail? He looked down. She said we needed to make sure bills didn't get missed. And you agreed? I didn't think of it as taking over. I placed the paper on the table. That is because you did not think of me as someone being taken from. His eyes filled. I was tired of his tears. Not because I did not care. Because they always arrived after the thing they might have prevented. He handed me another page. This is the worst one. I almost did not take it. But I did. It was a message Natalie had sent to someone named Derek Hall, a property manager. We may have a family home available soon. Elderly owner is transitioning after a medical event. We're still sorting authority, but would like to know what monthly management would look like if we decide to keep it as income property instead of selling. Income property. I stared at the words until they blurred. My home had become income property while I was still learning how to stand without dizziness. Laura whispered something under her breath I was glad my mother was not alive to hear. Michael leaned forward. Mom, I swear I didn't see that until last night. Michael, I said quietly, did you wonder why your wife needed my garage code? He closed his eyes. Not enough. Did you wonder why my suitcases had to be outside instead of waiting inside? No. Did you wonder why the apartment was paid for before I came home? He pressed his palms against his eyes. No. Then do not keep telling me what you did not know. Tell me what you chose not to ask. That broke something in him. His shoulders shook once. Then he nodded. I chose not to ask because I was afraid of the answer. The room went still. There it was. The sentence I had been waiting for without knowing it. Not an excuse. Not a defense. A confession. I leaned back in George's chair. And now? Now I have the answer. Before I could respond, tires sounded in the driveway. Laura moved to the window. Her face changed. Natalie. Michael stood quickly. I didn't tell her I was coming. She probably tracked your phone, Laura said coldly. A moment later, Natalie knocked once and opened the door. The new lock stopped her. For 1 second, the doorknob rattled. Then came a sharper knock. Michael looked at me. I looked at Laura. Then I picked up my phone and called Arthur. He answered on the first ring. She's here, I said. I'm 5 minutes away. Of course he was. Arthur Coleman had not been on standby. He had been nearby. Good man. I put the phone on speaker and set it on the coffee table. Michael walked to the door but did not open it. Natalie, he called through the wood, wait outside. Her voice came back, tight and incredulous. Open this door. No. The word startled me. Maybe it startled him too. There was silence from the porch. Then Natalie said, Michael, open the door. No, he repeated. Not louder, but firmer. I saw his hand tremble near the lock. He did not turn it. Laura looked at me, and for the first time in days, her face showed a hint of hope. Natalie knocked again, harder. Helen, this is childish. I stood slowly. Laura came to my side, but I did not need her yet. I walked to the door. Michael stepped back. I opened it only after sliding the security chain into place. Natalie stood on the porch, her face flushed beneath perfect makeup. She looked at the chain as if it had insulted her. What is this? She demanded. A boundary, I said. Her eyes moved past me to the living room. She saw the papers on the coffee table. Then she saw Michael standing inside. Something flickered across her face. Fear. There it was. Small, but real. What did you do? She asked him. Michael's voice was quiet. I found the emails. Natalie went still. For the first time since I had known her, she had no immediate sentence ready. Then she recovered. You went through my private correspondence? Our shared computer, he said. That is not the issue, I said. Her eyes snapped to me. Oh, of course. This is what you wanted. Divide us. Make him choose. I looked at her through the narrow opening of the door. Natalie, you put my bags outside while I was wearing a hospital bracelet. You contacted a recovery residence without my consent. You contacted a realtor. You contacted a property manager. You packed my husband's watch in a plastic bag. You called adult services because I refused to disappear quietly. Her mouth tightened. I called because I was concerned. No, I said. You called because the lawyer did not scare me enough. The color rose in her cheeks. Michael stepped closer behind me. Natalie, he said, what is Parker property? Her expression changed again. Not fear this time. Anger. You had no right. What is it? It's a folder. For my mother's house? For planning. Planning what? She looked at him as if he were stupid. Our future. The words entered the room and stripped away the last layer of politeness. Our future. Not my safety. Not my recovery. Not family support. Our future. Michael stared at her. My mother's house was part of our future? Natalie looked from him to me, then back to him. You are acting shocked because she's standing here. But you know the truth. We are drowning, Michael. Your business is unstable. The kids will need college money someday. This house is too big for one old woman who just had heart trouble. The words hit the room like glass breaking. One old woman. Laura stepped forward. Say that again. I lifted a hand. No, this was mine. Natalie had finally stopped hiding behind concern. I wanted Michael to hear it without interruption. I opened the door wider but kept the chain in place. This old woman, I said, owns the house. Natalie's lips parted. Before she could answer, Arthur's car pulled up behind her. He stepped out with his leather folder, moving with that same slow precision. Evelyn appeared from her house at almost the exact same time, as if pulled by instinct or fury. Arthur joined Natalie on the porch. Mrs. Parker, he said to me, would you like me present for this conversation? Yes. I closed the door, removed the chain, and reopened it. Natalie tried to step inside. Arthur moved slightly, not blocking dramatically. Just enough. Mrs. Parker has not invited you in. Natalie looked at him with open hatred. This is my husband's family home, Arthur said. It is Helen Parker's legal residence and property. Michael came to the doorway. Natalie, stay outside. She stared at him. Are you serious? Yes. There are moments in a marriage when a person discovers the voice they should have used years ago. Michael had found his late, but he had found it. Arthur turned to me. Helen? I looked at Natalie. The woman who had smiled beside my locked door. The woman who changed my curtains, packed my memories, called my home income property, and told people I was resisting care. I spoke slowly. Natalie, you tried to put me outside my life. Today, you will stand outside my door while the truth is spoken inside. Her face hardened. You will regret humiliating me. I almost smiled. Almost. No, I said. I regret trusting you with my garage code. Evelyn made a sound that might have been a cough, but wasn't. Arthur entered. Evelyn entered. Natalie remained on the porch. Michael did not move to comfort her. That may have been the loudest silence of all. We returned to the living room, leaving the front door open but the screen door locked. Natalie stood outside, visible but separate. For once, she could hear but not control. Arthur reviewed each document. The realtor email, the rental estimate, the property management inquiry, the draft authorization, the Willow Creek file, the adult services report, the neighbor camera footage, the family messages. He laid them out on my coffee table in a neat line, a paper trail of theft disguised as concern. Michael sat with his head bowed. Laura stood beside the bookshelves. Evelyn stood by the front window, arms crossed, watching Natalie as if daring her to breathe wrong. Arthur looked at Michael. Mr. Parker, based on what is here, your mother's property, residence, medical recovery, and personal belongings were interfered with without her consent. Michael whispered, I know. Arthur continued. Mrs. Parker is within her rights to restrict access, revoke any informal permissions, update legal documents, and pursue further remedies if she chooses. Natalie called from the porch. This is insane! No one answered her. I looked at my son. Michael! He raised his eyes. I am going to say this once, and I want you to hear every word. He nodded. You did not put the first idea in Natalie's head, but you gave her access to me. You gave her silence. You gave her your agreement when you should have given her no. You helped carry my bags. His face crumpled. Yes, you stood beside her while she locked me out. Yes, you let her call it care. His voice broke. Yes, I took a breath. My chest hurt, but I kept going. You do not get to fix this by crying. You fix it by telling the truth even when Natalie is angry. You fix it by returning what was taken. You fix it by accepting that I am not yours to manage. He nodded, tears on his face. I know. This time, I believed he was beginning to. Not fully. Beginning. Natalie laughed from the porch, a sharp, ugly sound. You're all being manipulated by an old woman who can barely climb stairs. Michael stood. He walked to the screen door. For a moment, I thought he would soften. Instead, he looked at his wife and said, "Stop." She froze. He continued, voice shaking. "Stop talking about my mother like she's already gone." The porch went silent. Natalie stared at him. I stared at him too. That was the sentence I had needed on the day I came home from the hospital. It arrived late. But it arrived. Arthur gathered the papers into a stack. Helen, we can proceed with the next legal changes immediately. Natalie's eyes sharpened from the porch. What legal changes? I looked at her. Then at Michael. Then at my living room, my blue curtains, George's bookshelves, the crooked blue bowl, the wedding portrait waiting to be rehung. My house, I said, will no longer be accessible to anyone who confuses love with ownership. Michael lowered his head. Natalie's face went pale, because this time she understood. This was not a conversation. It was the end of her access.